this great panel of experts. As we approach the August 2nd debt limit deadline, I, like most of my colleagues, am very concerned about the double-pronged threat that we face. And I want to emphasize the double-pronged nature of the threat because there's only one side of it that I feel has gotten adequate attention. On the one hand, we face a very real threat that has gotten a lot of attention, that if we don't raise the debt limit by August 2nd, bad things will happen. Bad things do happen when you're traveling at 120 miles an hour and you immediately decelerate to 50 or 60 miles an hour. If you do it a little bit more gradually, things can be a little bit less painful and injurious. On the other hand, we also face a different risk, one that has gotten far too little attention. That is that if we raise the debt limit reflexively, if we raise the debt limit the same way we have always raised it in the past, if we raise it especially to an unprecedented $2.4 trillion amount, all in one fell swoop without putting in permanent binding structural spending reform mechanisms that will fundamentally change the way that we spend money in Washington and put us on a trajectory toward a balanced budget, we will face a credit downgrade. And that threat could well be as severe, if not more severe, than the threat associated with not raising it, at least in the short-term period. It is at that point that I think our most vulnerable populations in America face perhaps the greatest threat. If we look at what happened in Greece, when Greece went into its economic tailspin after its debt-to-GDP ratio went well above 100%, let's just say it's a very bad time to be a poor person or an elderly person or a person who, for whatever reason, is dependent on government assistance or government programs of one sort or another in Greece. Because when that happens, when your sovereign credit rating goes down, goes that badly, that quickly, it's the poor and the otherwise vulnerable that suffer the most. So, Dr. Reischauer, I have a question in response to your testimony, both your initial testimony and your answers to some of these questions. You referred to America's vulnerable populations and the fact that if we had a balanced budget amendment in place, that might limit or impair our ability to provide them the services that they need to support them. But isn't it also true, Doctor, that if we do raise the debt limit again, and if we don't put in place a permanent structural binding spending reform mechanism, that could also bring about revenue shortfalls that are equally, if not more, harsh, draconian, and abrupt?
My response to that is that the reference in my answers to the questions and in my prepared statement was about the cyclical nature of the economy, and if you had a balanced budget, you would have a hard time paying unemployment benefits, SNAP benefits, various things that people depend on. That's sort of a short-term issue. On the long-term issue, I agree with you completely that if we let this fiscal situation continue to run out of control until there is a response from international markets and we are forced to make changes, not on our own timetable, not maybe in our own priorities, but being dictated to by our creditors or international lending agencies, the fate of low-income, vulnerable, elderly populations will be severely tested, I think. One reason I have long been an advocate of putting our fiscal house in order is precisely that. I think it's in the long run in the best interests of those who are less fortunate to get this done and get it done quickly. Whether one needs a balanced budget amendment or some extraordinary set of rules to do this, I'm a bit skeptical because I've watched this process over a 30-year period, and many times we have said, well, this is the silver bullet. This is the process reform that will make it happen. And it hasn't happened.
But does the fact that it hasn't passed and we still haven't solved the problem prove your point, or does it prove the opposite point? I mean, one could argue, could one not, that because it hasn't passed and because we have still not solved the problem, perhaps we ought to do that which we have failed to do in the past, which is constitutionally obligate ourselves to do it.
That is an argument we could have, but I don't want to take the risk.
Understood. And I see my time has expired. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Congressman Burgess.
Thank you, Chairman.